Welcome, legacy driven marriages family, to podcast episode number 2626. If you can believe that, Stephanie. As always, I'm here with my partner in crime, Stephanie McKinley.
Hey, everybody.
Man, today we are talking about relationship core values. Oh,
This is a big one for us.
oh man. And we not only want to talk to you guys about how to have conversations about them, which is critical at the beginning of your relationship, intermediate and long term, because you do really change throughout your life. But one thing that does still kind of remain consistent throughout most of your life really is your core values. And so we want to make sure that you know how to have these conversations, especially if you're in the beginning stages of a relationship, especially if you're in that blinding excitement, puppy love. They can do no wrong. It's okay that they want to have kids and I don't have kids. We'll figure that out later part of your relationship, because let me tell you, we have seen firsthand, and we have experienced some of these things, that when some of these values aren't totally aligned in your relationship, it can be potentially doomed to failure, or you need to have these radical, candid conversations throughout your relationship and reach a compromise that still keeps you both aligned with your core values, but lets you be authentically you.
Yeah, you guys, we see this time and time again in so many relationships. That's why we're going to talk about it today, because we feel like these core values always end up coming up at some point in your relationship. And if you don't discuss them early on, it can get really ugly later. And that's not when you want to be having the discussion. So, I mean, really, this one, I feel like it's pretty important, even in the beginning, even though some of this would be kind of weird to talk about when you're just starting to date someone. But I mean, they're kind of deal breakers, and it really leads to the success or demise of the relationship when it comes down to these fundamental things. So, and this is what we see in so many relationships, including our own, that it just becomes so crucial. And and sometimes it doesn't come up for a long time. And then it's one of those things that will end the relationship. So it's really, really important that you talk about these early on and often, because a lot of times too, as we grow, we change. And sometimes what we want in the beginning or when we're younger isn't the same when we get older. And so that can change too as you evolve in a relationship. So it's important to kind of keep discussing these things too.
Well, I think we talked about, God, the first relationship series we did when we shifted focus from individual legacy warrior podcast to legacy driven marriages, and really digging into where our passion is at. And that's helping people fight to save their relationships and marriage and elevate their legacies. We realized the importance of, and by the way, guys, if you hear my voice is a little hoarse today, I'm pushing through. I've had this happen probably every 12 to 18 months where I lose my voice for a little while. So I'm just going to sound like a WWF wrestler as I sit on here with you guys today. But, as always, we wanted to create something catchy and relatively memorable in the podcast. So we actually came up with 5 pillars of values for relationships that all start with the letter F. And so we're going to be talking about faith, family, finances, friends, and fun, and how all those are such a key contributor to just not only the success of your relationship, but frankly, the overall happiness and joy of your partnership and of who you actually are individually. Because the stronger your partnership is, the better you're going to feel individually. The better you feel individually, the stronger your partnership is. It's kind of crazy how it all goes along, but it's so important. And I think, Steph, you were saying before, this obviously there's way more than just these 5.
Oh yeah. Walt and we always do a little bit of research behind, like we discuss what we think we've seen and what we feel is important. And then we also do some research to see what others find is important. And so, we saw ones where there's 17 core values and there's many of them out there. And we're not saying these are the only ones. These are just what we consider kind of in our top 5 of what's really important when you come down to like crucial things for a long-term relationship.
Yeah. So when you're listening, first of all, go hit that subscribe button, darn it. But when you're listening to this today, go to @legacy Driven Marriages on Instagram, or join our Facebook group. Those are really communities that we've created to keep people like all of us in the same place, people willing to fight for their marriage, people willing to have the crucial conversations, people willing to communicate and elevate legacies, and not only create the best version for us, but also help other people create the best version for them. Go there and tell us what other core values that you find important, because we like to hear those things, and it helps us frame up future episodes.
And I also want to mention that a couple of our previous episodes, we've actually talked about a few that are also our core values, like communication, trust, honesty, loyalty. All those things are obviously, those are key values also. It's just, these are ones we haven't really talked as much about. Those other ones we dedicated whole episodes, you'll see. So obviously, like communication, we found very important. We could probably do several episodes on that one thing, but we're just going to talk about some of these that we've just seen a lot in a lot of relationships, that were some big things that we've noticed that it always comes up, and it's kind of hard to maintain a good relationship if you don't get on the same page with these.
Yeah, the first one we're going to talk about today is your faith, your spirituality. Look, I don't care where you fall on the spectrum of spirituality. For Stephanie and I, we're Christians. We believe in God and we believe in Jesus, but our job is only to plant seeds for other people. Our job isn't to force our beliefs on you. So put whatever context you need to into whatever your beliefs are into your relationship. And I challenge you also, watch this, or if you're watching on YouTube, or listen, if you're listening to this with your significant other, listen to it, because maybe this can help open up dialogue and conversation that both of you guys have been a little bit uncomfortable to talk about or touch on. So listen to this together and then really sit back and have these conversations. And faith is huge for us. And I didn't grow up in a house where there was any spirituality. A lot of you guys know about my story at this point. You know, I went through a lot of abuse. I moved around a lot, foster homes, step parents, real parents, just everywhere, but someplace consistent. And besides my grandmother taking me to church a couple times when I was a kid, there was no spirituality. I always felt the presence of God somehow, some way. In my deepest, darkest moments, he always showed up for me, even though I didn't know that's what it was at the time. And so for me, faith and meeting somebody that was spiritually aligned to my faith, like you, was really important. And a lot of people don't know, and I've been wearing it for 26 years. The first gift Stephanie ever got to me, you can see it on YouTube. You can't see it if you're listening, but it's a chain with a cross on it. So I do have a hairy chest. So I look like a Guido if I have my shirt off and I just have my chain on, but don't you judge me. But having you spiritually aligned with my own spirituality, knowing we wanted to raise a family, and we'll talk about these other categories in a minute, was really important to me. And one of the most important things to me, frankly, at the beginning of our relationship, even if I didn't put a priority on that piece in the moment, subconsciously it was a priority because it was a value and a core belief that I had.
Yeah, I have to say, I've mentioned it in previous episodes, but very interesting when I met Walt, that he'd come to find out he wasn't really raised, like he said, he wasn't raised with any religion other than his grandmother kind of taking him to church a couple times. And she was Catholic, and so she was pretty religious, but he didn't see her all that often. And so it was very infrequent, and that was only his really only exposure. And then he's told the story about kind of how a friend actually brought him to church. And you know, it's in his book. And when I met
Monsters in My House, a true story. Shameless plug. Go on there and get that.
When I met him, it was just crazy because I saw so many signs in
Hold on,
him.
just real quick. Smile. You got something in your teeth. That's love, man. That's love. What I'm supposed to do? Just let her be on YouTube with something in her teeth?
Where?
Hey, no, the other side.
Here?
Yeah. Look, this is real. This is real life right here. This marriage right here. Tell me,
Thanks,
one of my core values is make sure nobody has nothing in their teeth, and it starts with my wife. Let me see.
I can tell it's there, but I can't. Okay, I got it.
All right, you're good, baby. Looking beautiful as ever. Go ahead.
So anyway, when I met Walt, it's weird because I noticed a lot of things about him that I felt like he was very spiritual, because I used to see him pray over all of his meals by himself. Just say a quick little, he would bow his head, say a quick little prayer to himself. And I just saw different things in him that, and I didn't even do that. And I grew up with a religion. And so it just stood out to me, but it was something that actually attracted me to him because I liked that he did that. I grew up with my two parents. So my dad was raised Episcopalian and my mom was Catholic. Now, my dad didn't really practice the religion, and Episcopalian is similar to Catholic. Um, but my mother made sure that she very much wanted us to be raised Catholic. And so we were baptized. She took us to church every Sunday. We had to go to Catholic, it's called catechism, the Catholic school, like a Sunday school kind of thing. She went to a Catholic school all her life, like all the way through high school. And so she was very much raised in that, and she wanted it for her kids. And so it was kind of weird for me though, because my parents weren't really on the necessarily same page with that. Not that my dad never went against it, or he just let her take us how she wanted to, but he didn't necessarily participate. He only came on Christmas and Easter. So it kind of, in a way, conflicting and confusing for me because he didn't really participate in that. And it was very strong belief for her. So I guess I kind of, and then, looking at my family now, I see like I have three brothers. So there's four of us. My three brothers don't practice anything, and I'm the only one practicing something. And I'm not even following Catholicism anymore. I'm more of a Christian. And so it's just very interesting that I think when the whole family unit is unified in that, it's much stronger and, less confusion for your kids. And so I kind of, not that it can't work, but I feel like it's a pretty big one to discuss in the beginning that if if someone is very strong in the religion and they get with someone who is not, is that going to work? You really need to discuss that. And like I've seen ones where I even saw my own aunt and uncle where um my aunt was Catholic and my uncle I don't think was really raised anything. He actually converted to Catholicism with her and they did it together.
But here's the thing about your uncle though, right? Like it was his choice. She didn't make him do it.
No.
She didn't necessarily even influence him to do it. He found that on his own. And I think the cool thing that's about your parents, the aspect of this that I don't want to get lost on people is your dad grew up with spirituality, with the religion. He just didn't necessarily practice it.
Right.
Your mom practiced it, right? And so your dad just didn't go to church. It's not that he didn't believe. He just didn't go to church and he didn't practice his religion, but he let his family go and he supported you guys going. He just didn't go too. And I think that we need to realize, and I heard the statistic not too long ago.
It didn't cause any
trouble, rift.
Yeah, nothing like that. But I just think, but then I've seen people that one has a very strong religion, the other doesn't. And it's hard to, because a lot of your morals and values will be heavily influenced by your religion. So,
well, and some people think like, I can change them. You can't change somebody to dig into their spirituality. They got to want to do it based upon their own testimony and experiences. But the thing about your parents is they can still work in that aspect. But what I do know, statistics have shown there's an extraordinarily small percentage of couples that get divorced when the man goes to church too, when the man is spiritual too, because typically the family will follow. And so men, if you're out there listening, you have to be the leader in your family. And part of that is putting your kids and your family in an environment that is known to build great core values, that is known to be able to give that pain to something bigger than yourself, and is known to teach right and wrong, right? Treat thy neighbor as they treat thyself, right? So I think that it's so important, this spirituality aspect and this faith aspect, because it can be a massive deal breaker later. So don't think that you can fix it later. Don't think you could bring them to God later. Don't think you could have them go whatever direction of spirituality you want to later.
By the way,
they have
even
to
for
want to.
us, like we didn't. So like I said, Walt and I actually both started out only knowing Catholicism, but neither of us felt we were getting what we needed to out of it. So together we chose to try some other things. And we actually went to we went to a Baptist church. We ended up going to a Christian church. And then ultimately we ended up liking the Christian church. So we stuck with it. But
But the core belief of faith
But like
and
I saw
spirituality
in
was
you,
there.
I at least saw like you believed in God.
Right. I wasn't an
And
atheist.
right.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
and I actually liked that I saw things in you that was I loved God. I knew that. And I knew ultimately that was going to be an influence in my life. So it didn't matter religion wise. It just mattered at least that like our core
Yep.
value there was the same.
And that kind of leads us to the next piece. Cause I think faith kind of umbrellas all that for us is your family. And oh man, like, let me tell you, there's so much to unpack here and we're going to try to keep this part. I told Steph, we can't go like 27 minutes on this cause I know we will, but we know friends who like some of them have kids and some of them don't. And then they get together later in life. One of them still wants kids and the other one doesn't. And they're trying to make relationships work, but they just can't. Like it's coming to a head as they fall more in love, as they spend more time together, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years together. And the person who said, I could be okay not having a kid because you don't want one, now is like, I'm actually not as okay with that as I thought that I was.
And this is where I said, you can change with time. So if you're in a long term relationship, even at maybe at the beginning you didn't want children and then later decide you do, and maybe the person you're with though they didn't change. And so this kind of stuff ends up becoming, relationship breakers because that's it. I mean, that's a big one. You can't
Yeah. Yeah.
wanting to have kids or not have kids is huge. I mean, you
Right.
can't
Because the commitment and dynamic of both is way different. And I mean, my younger sister is a great example of this. She didn't want kids when she was younger. She met somebody, fell in love, and now she has a son, and they're both incredible parents. He always did want kids. So, but that could have caused a problem at some point. We have friends that we know now, it causes a problem, even if it's just this undertone that happens that starts to put this wall of resentment up. We talk about that trickle of resentment that ultimately turns into a fire hose. So you got at the beginning of our relationship, Steph and I did have conversations. We both did want children. Did we want them then? Heck no.
Well, and I feel like sometimes like this is happening a lot in this generation where there's a lot of people who are divorcing later in life. They already have children from a previous relationship and then they're trying to start a new relationship. And sometimes you both come into it with kids, but sometimes one has kids and the other doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that person never had kids and they still want them, but they're getting in a relationship with someone who already has. And that's where things start to get tricky. And you've got to realize and know if you're getting into a relationship where you see that person already has children, there's going to be a chance you better have that conversation because there's definitely going to be a chance they may not want anymore.
And how much of a deal, you got to be honest with yourself. How much of a deal breaker is this? Because in that puppy love stage, like you're going to look past it and you're going to think that you can have this conversation later, but it's way harder to end something later when there's all these emotional investment that you put in and you're in love and you love them, but you don't have the same values and the same systems and the same beliefs and where you want to head. The goals aren't the same. And if you don't have that, ultimately you don't have anything. And the second piece to the family piece, past just do you want to have them, is what happens when you do. And let me tell you guys, we have seen.
Plus, we also know people that there's some people who can't have children. So you kind of be upfront with that right away, letting the other person know you can't so that they don't get into a relationship with you thinking they can.
Honest, radical conversations. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to the other person too. Like have these conversations. But what happens when you have a family, Steph, and you don't align on how you want to raise the kids necessarily? Boy, we have seen some issues with this one.
Yes. And this is another thing we kind of talked about a little bit before too. Even for Walt and I was a little different because our family dynamics, how we grew up was so different. I grew up in my traditional type of family where I had both parents. He didn't, his divorced, and then he has gone back and forth between living with mother and father, but always kind of a single parent. And so we see a lot of couples and we have friends that the same thing, like one of them came from a family where there was a single parent, one with and then they were raised being parented differently. And so you can't help but have some of that in you when you go to raise children. If you never had a father there, how are you going to know how to let the father be a father? Because you didn't have that. So some of this stuff really doesn't come into play until you start to raise your children and start realizing that you don't parent the same. And, how you discipline your children is huge. I mean, because, some people believe in disciplining a certain way and others don't. And
some people don't even be disciplined. They're kids are brats. You know what I'm saying? So like you got to have a balance. And, shout out Steph and I, we knew we wanted to create like parameters for our kids and boundaries. And we wanted to discipline because of the abuse I endured as a kid. Like I wanted to make sure that I didn't hit my kids. Like if I spanked, I wanted to be shock and awe. Like they were trying to stick their finger in a socket or something crazy where I never wanted them to do that again. So it more like scared them.
And honestly, I never went through
Spanked,
abuse
right?
or anything.
So we watched this show Super Nanny back in the day with this lady, Joe Frost. And I'm telling y'all, like every time she went into the house, the parents were bickering, like the kids were out of damn control, smacking the mom. Smacking the mom in the face, like crazy
Super
stuff.
Nanny would get called into where their family was out of control. There was chaos and kids were kind of running the house. And every time she went in and you'd see this crazy household, every time it came back to the parents. She never would blame it on the kids. It was always the parents' fault because the parents are the ones, you're in charge. You're supposed to discipline. You're supposed to teach them how to be. If you're not doing those things, it's on you. You're teaching your children to not.
Well, she would be like fixing marriages at the same time because when your kids are out of control, now you're pissing each other off. Or what we've seen from people, they undermine each other in front of their children. The dads are more stern. Women are more loving. That feminine energy is loving. Masculine is more stern and boundaries and parameters and all these things. And we're going to keep on a schedule and do this stuff. At least that's how it was for Steph and I. So but Stephanie, thank God, never did this, but we saw this with other people that we knew. The dad would be stern and not yelling, just be stern, like matter of fact about it. And kids need that matter of factness from their parents, especially their fathers. And the mom, don't talk to them like that. Oh, come here, little Johnny. It's going to be okay. When Johnny was acting like a little freaking brat and not listening, and Johnny needed the stern conversation and he needed the timeout that the dad put him in, but the mother wouldn't let him do it. And I've seen it swapped, by the way, ladies, because I know y'all ladies can be savage out there too. And that undermining of each other, period, especially in front of your children, adds a dynamic and an instantaneous level of anger and resentment and some pissed offness to your marriage that you just don't want to have. So even when Steph and I didn't agree about something, maybe I was a little too hard on the kids or something, she would never talk to them in front of me. She would always talk to me in private.
I want to say this is key to me. This is key parenting is you have to be a united front to your children. I don't care what goes down. You have to be a united front. So, for example, like he said, if there was a situation where I felt like he kind of overreacted on something and I didn't like how he dealt with the situation, I would not interrupt what was going on. I would let it play out. And then afterwards, I would pull him aside and we would talk in private and I would explain to him what I didn't like about it. And we'd have a discussion about it. And vice versa, same thing. If there's something he didn't like that I did, he would tell me afterwards when it's just us, not in front of our kids. Because if to them, we're a united front. We work together, we're a team. So that they can't go to one and get something and go. And they'll do it. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, they know what each of us are soft at, right? So they know how to play you.
Learn how to play you, for sure. Because no matter what, there's going to be things that you're different on. And there's certain things he's more strict about, certain things I'm more strict about. And they're not always the same things. And they know it. And they will play you. And so we always have to communicate with each other about it. And we always tried to be united in front of them. Even if I didn't agree with something, I would wait till after to tell him. And then hopefully the next time that wouldn't happen.
And by the way, we're not talking about where violence is involved, demeaning and belittling. That's different, right? Like that's a toxic environment that you either need to get away from or have a real conversation about. We're talking about when maybe the tone is a little stern or the punishment was a little bit egregious for.
Because let's be honest, there's always times where we all overreact at times. There's been times where I had a bad day and I overly went off on the kids and sometimes even then I have to check myself and then go back there's been times where I felt like he was a little too harsh, and then I'd talk to him after and say, I think you should go talk to them, like, because that was a little bit, you know, probably
Extra.
hurt. Yeah, might have been hurtful. Like I don't want to see you damage your relationship. And so sometimes he would go back, and I've done the same, or I've gone back and talked to the kids and say, "Hey, I overreacted. I'm sorry. But
Mhm.
here's how I really did, like, this did really upset me." And I would explain it more when I was more calm. And sometimes you have to do that. But I also think it's okay for your kids to see you react that way sometimes, because then they're going to know that was really important to them, or that really upset them. So I do think that don't beat yourself up if you did overreact, or but I do think there's something to, like he was saying, don't undermine your partner in front of your kids.
So here's the thing. I think what we all need to do is realize, like, you're going to get triggered. Sometimes you're going to overreact, and just apologize if you do, right? Like, there's times when you need to apologize to your kids too, just like you do to your spouse.
Mhm.
And it should be easier than it is. Let's all be real. Sometimes that feels difficult to do. Just own your stuff, man. Just own your stuff, but have the conversation with your spouse and say, "Hey, here's where I need more help with the discipline. Here's where I need you to step in more, so I'm not always the bad guy." Or hey, here's where you're kind of coming off the top rope with the elbow every single
Yeah,
time.
because there's
And
been
you're,
times, like you said, you told me, "Hey, like, I feel
oh
like
yeah,
I'm always being the discipline heavy. I need you to step up more in
right.
that."
I want to be the
And
cool
then
dad sometimes
but
too.
then so he would back off a little, and I would step in. And
Hmm.
so, but we do have to, that's why you have to have that communication with each other. You have to
Hmm.
be able to talk to each other about it, and don't do it in front of your children.
But the core value of wanting to have expectations and wanting to have, like, borderlines for the kids, and boundaries that we didn't want them to cross over. We both wanted that. What that looked like was a little bit different, but at the core, we both knew that was necessary to creating great, well-adjusted young adults like we have now, versus entitled bratty kids. And by the way, every 6 months or so, we'd have to have conversations with them and bring them back down to reality. And so don't think that that doesn't happen. Even still, it's a never ending saga that you have as your kids evolve and the ages adjust. And I think the next piece we wanted to talk about today is a huge one too, and it's finances, right? So we did faith, we did family, and finances is another one. I mean, we've seen some people be on opposite spectrums
Oh yeah, and this
of
is definitely going to affect
how
your
they
kids.
think and spend and know and make and are
Yeah, if
motivated by money.
you got a saver married to a spender, there's going to be arguments there, and your finances are crucial to the whole well-being of everything. So you do have to get on the same page with your finances.
Yeah. Budget. You got, like,
Yeah.
sit down. So I have always kind of budgeted, but mentally, right? So when Steph and I got married and we combined accounts, that's what we chose to do. That's not what everybody chooses to do. We combined accounts because I was deploying. She took care of all the bills. Well, I saw a lot of spouses, I won't just say women, but spouses that stayed at home. When their spouse would go on deployment, the person at home would spend like crazy, partially to fill the void, partially maybe they were a spender, whatever it was, and then bills not get paid. Now that's affecting their career, their job, their mental health. Like, what else is my spouse doing? What? And so the military has a whole different dynamic to it, but
Mm.
still a microcosm of what happens in our world. You got to have conversations, and by the way, it can't just be save everything, and it can't be
Right.
just spend everything.
So I think there has to be a real conversation around how you're going to budget your money, so that you're both, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. If you both work some way to find an equal contribution to your bills, and also have an equal contribution to whatever your interests are. If you have things you specifically want to spend money on, so maybe you each get the same amount to spend how you want, and then you use the rest for, you split the bills. Like, I think that's the most equitable, fair way to do it. But I mean, everybody has their ways. Some people just, oh, it's just, just time determine what they're going to pay for bills, and then the rest is just theirs. I mean, I don't know, but there's a lot of conflict around finances. We've seen it many
Oh Lord, boy.
times.
And but so just do what works for you. Like Steph and I, back in the day when we were living paycheck to paycheck, back in the day, inflation has changed this, but it was like $50. Hey, if you spend more than $50 on something, just let the other one know. You don't need to ask for permission, but just out of courtesy, let the other person know. We don't really do that as much now. We just both kind of are very value based in how we, our core beliefs are the same in how we want to spend money. Bills come first. Because if you owe money on bills, the stress level is high, because we've had those seasons too.
And obviously this stuff becomes more of an issue when you're living paycheck to paycheck, or when you're struggling to get by, or you're struggling to pay your bills. This becomes a lot more of an issue, where if you're doing well financially, it's not going to be as,
my first 10 years in the Navy, when I was enlisted, not an officer yet, money, like spending $50 was a big deal. You know what I mean? That might have been money she had earmarked for some food. So it's having those conversations, and it's not to say like you can't still do individual stuff. I'll go buy some fish and stuff. Stephanie will go do some stuff, do shopping.
But this is where I talked about we have different priorities sometimes. Right. I think men a lot of times prioritize entertainment over a lot of things, and women, it's a lot about beauty and our clothing and getting hair done and nails and all that stuff. And so men don't really want to spend money on that.
I mean, most of the women are throwing away their spouses, their men's holy underwear. Like, I had this Charger shirt, y'all don't even know. Like, this how much
I gotta buy his clothes for him because he's not gonna buy.
I had this Charger shirt, San Diego Charger shirt. Well, now LA Chargers, but I had this Charger shirt, and it was so old, it was super comfy. It had a hole in the back a little bit at the bottom.
It was literally starting to become see-through.
Like the fibers of the shirt were spreading apart.
This shirt has died now.
She was like, if you were in a wet t-shirt contest, you might win. So this shirt is about to die. So
on his way out.
It was rough. It was rough. But we're joking, but again, have the conversation, like make goals for what you want to spend the money on and why. And if 80-90% of your money spending is on common goals and common direction you want to move forward, then the 10% of money where you spend it on your individual interests, it's just not a big deal most of the time.
Or even, and this becomes a real issue too on big ticket things. Like someone wants a boat and the other one doesn't, then, that's a big cost. So it's like, you're definitely going to have to agree on that, or there's going to be resentment for a long time over that. And it's going to bleed into a lot of things. So I hope you're understanding where we're getting with this, where that's why I say, like, I think it's the most equitable way is to kind of give each other an even amount of money that you get to spend on what you want. So then however you want to spend it, you can't say something to the other one. It's when one person's spending a lot on their own personal interests and the other isn't. And they're like, hey, this is a partnership. Why are you, spending money on gambling when that doesn't help our situation?
Right. That's not part of our common goals. And by the way, I want to mention this too, because this is mostly for the fellas. I know Stephanie stayed at home, especially if you have a stay-at-home spouse. And I haven't always showed up great with this. You can't. Steph still spent money. She still was able to spend, but I would sometimes have a snarky comment about the money that she made, because I went out and I'm the one who actually earned the paycheck. But in the meantime, she was the one keeping our house together and doing everything else so that I can go out and become an officer and become an executive in corporate America and do those things and have the outward success from the home, because I had a wife that was holding down the house. And the roles could be reversed, but don't penalize your spouse that stays at home that maybe doesn't earn the dollars, but is still putting just as much, if not more work and more effort into the family as you are. Don't penalize them for not bringing home the greenbacks. Right? Like, it's got to be shared equity and all of those things. And those comments you make can be hurtful, because I know I've hurt Stephanie with those things before. So I just wanted to mention that before we move on to this next topic, that Steph will kick off here in a second. And just say, if you're working and your spouse isn't, that is not a green light to make them feel bad about spending money because you're the one who went and earned it. What they're doing at home, what would that earn them? Far more than you would earn going out to your job every single day. So find the goals, find the balance, have the conversation, and figure out what works for you and your relationship, because what works for you guys might not be the thing that works for us. And that's okay too. That's the beauty of it. It's not one size fits all. The only one size fits all part of that is making sure that you align your core values you align the conversation to make sure you're moving forward arm in arm together.
So I hope you guys are seeing, you can see communication coming up in every single one of these. That's why communication is such a huge core value, because every one of these topics requires you to communicate about it, because everybody has different values and morals and opinions, and you really have to discuss these things. So we're going to move to number 4 for us, which is friends. So by this, we mean sometimes, you know, when you come into a relationship, you were single previously, you get into a relationship, and maybe you had more single friends, and now you're in a relationship and it's not as easy to hang out with those single friends. And also, so you want to be able to hang out with your partner and hang out with friends. So then sometimes your relationships start to change in that realm, and you start to have more couple friends than you do single friends. And I'm not trying to say that you can't hang out with your single friends still, but usually you're probably going to make time to just be a girls' night if it's me hanging out with one of my single girlfriends or something like that. We've had times where we've had a single friend hang out with us and we're a couple, but I mean, I do think that there has to be a balance in your friendships with people, that you can hang out with other couples that are like-minded to you.
Yep.
You share things that you all enjoy.
Common stages of life, common goals.
Because it usually doesn't work out well if, because there have been times even with our relationship where one of us, like, if he went and hung out with his single friend a lot, but we're married, I'm like, well, starting to be like, okay, but you're not going to be doing the kind of things that
not doing single man stuff. You better not be doing no single man stuff.
Yeah, you're going out to bars and clubs, and you're a married family man. Like, it just doesn't, it's not going to sit well with your significant other. So we have seen this cause a lot of problems in relationships. It really does, because it will bother the other person. Like, if it's just like, I think he'd feel the same way if I'm hanging out with a single girlfriend and we're going out because she's trying to meet someone and I'm hanging out with her doing that. But
just put you in a precarious situation. And I think it's not to say you got to have your individual friends too, right? Like, you don't lose your individuality in your relationship. You keep your individuality, and the happier you are in that individuality, typically the better your relationship is going to do if there's balance. And so when you have other married coupled friends, like we have some friends that are like this. One of them, basically, it was almost like a divorcee club that they hung out with, and taking vacations, doing all these things all the time. And he never went. And he was like, whatever, I don't even care. I don't really want to go to that anyway. But they didn't get to do things that connected them with other couples. And I think that's the miss that happens. It's not a control thing. It's not you shouldn't hang out with your single friends. It's when you're hanging out with other couples, when you're doing things that other couples do, when you're hanging out with other people in the same space of life that you're in, parents, married people, almost for us now getting close to empty nesters, like entrepreneurs, like when you're doing those things together with other people in the same life space, your relationship is going to naturally be stronger.
It's just so much better for your relationship.
Yes.
I mean, how could it not be?
It's together, right? And so, and that takes us to the next space. So have that conversation about friends. Find other friends in the life space that you're in and hang out with them together.
Trust me, you guys know we've been together 24 years and we've evolved through many stages of life. So our friends have really changed with our stages of life, because once you start having kids, it's so different. I couldn't go hang out with someone who's single when I have a small child at home. So I found other moms with young children so that we could all hang out, or we found other couples with kids so we could all hang out as families and enjoy and do the same activities.
Well, I think that leads us to the last thing. So we did faith, family, finances, friends, and fun. You hear Steph and I talk about fun a lot. If you're part of our,
we did a whole episode on this.
if you're part of our Legacy Driven Marriages stuff, like there's always some stuff about going out and adventuring and having fun with your spouse. When you have a friends group where you can go together and hang out, like it's fun. It's spending time together. Steph and I will go hang out with friends and with a couple different groups of friends, and that are in different life spaces, that we have different parts of us that are in those life spaces. And sometimes like we'll come back and every once in a while give each other a kiss, but we're having totally separate conversations. We're not even necessarily like right next to each other. We're just at the same place, just having a good time. And then you walk by, give each other a kiss, pat on the butt, whatever, and keep having a conversation, bring a drink, whatever you're doing. But we're having something fun. It's a social interaction together, like going out. We just got back from Yosemite, which is why my voice is all messed up. I keep saying that. Dang it. Sorry, Yellowstone. We just got back from Yellowstone, took this epic trip with our family and saw the salt flats in Utah too. I mean, it was the Grand Teton Mountains. It was so much fun and this beautiful experience that we all had together. And man, I'll tell you guys, like when our kids were little, because we didn't live close to anybody because we're a military family. And I'll let you jump in here too, Steph. When our kids were little, we didn't do those fun things anymore. We didn't make them a priority. We did fun things as a family, not as individuals. I mean, not as a couple. And we lost our own way, which really made us feel further apart than we ever had at that moment, because we went from maximum fun, maximum togetherness, maximum love, being married together 7 years, married 5, had a kid. Everything changed, including the season of life that we were in.
Yeah, I have to tell you guys, when there was a long period in there, it gets difficult when you start to really adult and you're going to work and you're living together every day, and then you start
adulting sucks, right? Man, damn.
When you have kids and the responsibilities and all that, and you start to get into this grind of everyday life, you really have to find some fun. You can't stop having fun. It's really, really crucial. We can't say it enough. That's why we dedicated an entire episode to that. Our anniversary edition was about having fun, because that's something we really learned when our relationship really got to a low
Learn the hard
point.
way. Yeah.
Was we didn't go have enough fun together, because it even got to where, because we had little kids, so then sometimes we started pursuing our own things, because it was like, well, at least one of us can be home with the kids and one of us can go do something we like. So start doing that. But that starts separating you more, not bringing you together. So we realized, like, we weren't doing enough to have fun together. You really have to make time for that.
Well, we were filling our own buckets individually a little bit, right? By doing those things that we did enjoy doing.
I don't have a girls' night. He'd go have a guys' night. Like,
right. Or go fishing or go.
Yeah.
So we were doing
like going to concerts with friends, but it was all girls. Like, we would have girls' nights, and like, but then none of those things were making us have fun together. So Correct. It was still, and then you're like, oh, glad you got to have fun.
Well, and then you're sitting there wondering, you're like, God, I don't feel as attached to my spouse anymore. I don't feel as close to them. I feel like we've kind of lost the magic in our relationship, when really you guys just aren't connected because you're not being intentional about spending time together and having fun and just spending that quality time together. Like, when was the last time you chased your spouse through the house and tried to pinch their butt, or, you know, like flirted with them, or sent them a nice text during the day, or like said, you know what, I'm going to plan the date night this time, or we're going to be intentional. Like, I know it's a lot for a babysitter right now, but we need to go do something fun, go bowling. Like, I don't care what you got to do. It doesn't have to be, and we'll do an episode on this here in the next week or two. We all think these macro things, these vacations, or the cruise with my honey, and we're going to do these big things. And we think that that's going to be the thing that saves our marriage. And if you're waiting for those things, your marriage is almost over anyway. You got to do the everyday things.
It's the small things,
the micro things every day, that just like you got to do for your own mental health and your own self-worth, you got to do those in your relationship. You got to feed imagine not eating but once every 6 months. You'd be dead.
Right.
That's your relationship, because you're waiting for your vacation to go do something fun. But you got to eat something every day. Shit, even if you just eat once a day, you can still stay alive.
Well, I want to say, because this is something we talked about, was you have to have commonalities as a couple. And it doesn't mean you're going to like everything that your partner likes, but you need some common things you like to do for fun together, and some things that are your own interests. But you have to have some that are together. And we know a lot of couples that we see that they really don't have any fundamental things they like to do for fun together. And it really affects the relationship, because if you're always pursuing your own interests, it doesn't lend to the relationship.
Right. Where's the compromise? Where's the support? Where's that at? By the way, Steph just gave you another F. We're going to call that one favorite things. Straight up got a bonus. That's number 6 right there. Keep them with the F thing. Oh, go Lord. I can't even laugh right now.
Like for Walt and I, we were both kind of athletic people, so we both always enjoyed things that are kind of athletic or sport wise that we bonded together. And but then we have our separate things too, like because I'm a woman and he's a man, there are things I like. I like shopping and things like that. He doesn't like doing, and he likes fishing. I didn't really like fishing. So like there's we have our certain things that we like that are
Yeah.
our own interests, and then we have things we like to do together.
Now, will
So
I go shopping with Stephanie? Yes. Oh, it so sucks. I don't even enjoy it at all. But I'll go with her, right? Because I know she enjoys doing that and just wait around and hold a bag or whatever. Conversely, she's gone fishing with me. After about 30 minutes of not catching nothing, she's like, how do you do this? Freaking sucks.
we have compromise on that, and there are times where it's like, okay, I'll at least give it a chance. I'll give it a try. You never know, I might like it. And if I just really don't, then I'm like, okay, that's your thing.
Right.
Like, and that's okay.
Yeah, there's times she'll be like, I'm going to go to the store and look for some of this. Do you want? No, hell no, I don't want to go. Go ahead, baby. Go ahead. I can be right here at the house and watch the TV. And conversely, she's been like, nope, go fishing with your buddy.
Yeah.
But then we always come back now, especially. And it's gotten easier as the kids have gotten older, but we weren't intentional. It almost cost us our marriage, and
Or
we
like,
became intentional.
I just went to go watch the Barbie movie, but I went to do that with a girlfriend and my daughter. So like, like mother daughter kind of thing, because we all as women like to. He doesn't want to see the Barbie movie. I mean, and I never would expect him to.
Right. I know Ken. Come on. But the night before that, we went and saw The Sound of Freedom together.
Right.
So
we went to see something.
We go still do stuff, and we're really intentional about that.
Even
And
down to our TV shows. Like, there's some things we watch together, and then there's some shows like he likes to watch Deadliest Catch and Gold Rush, and I'm just like, oh, I'm just so bored by those shows that like I won't watch them. He watches them on his own.
I don't even know how she don't like those. Look, y'all can go ahead and judge her right now on that kind of stuff, because there are some good shows right there.
Yeah, History Channel is not. He's like
Discovery, History Channel. That's what you I need, y'all.
And I love HGTV, and he'll watch sometimes when it's like a house hunting thing, but
otherwise they'd be like, it's Farmhouse Fresh Contemporary, and I'm like, what the? You're just making a word. You're just putting words together on HGTV to make it your own little thing.
I like my girly Selling Sunset kind of show, and he's like, oh my god,
I'm about to watch 1 second of that.
But I hope you guys get what we're saying. Like, find things that you have that you can enjoy together. It is really important. I mean, I can't say it enough. It really, really, really is. I mean, and it took us getting to a really low point in our marriage to figure that out. And that's why we stress it so much, because we find, and we see it in a lot of other couples also, that if you can't share some ways to have fun together, it's hard for your relationship to thrive. So,
yeah, I think I'll add one thing to that is be honest with yourself about what you need, what you want, what your core values are. If you're in the beginning of your relationship, be honest enough with yourself to say, this isn't going to work because there's too many things misaligned that I'm not willing to compromise on. Know that before you get into a relationship or maybe have a kid, and now you're having these conversations, which become way harder. And if you feel like your values aren't necessarily aligned on certain things, then make sure that you have that conversation with your partner. Look, you love them, you're in love with them, you want to make it work. I know that you do. Don't let the resentment and pain and anger that comes with not having these core values aligned, because a lot of things are going to get out of whack, start to deteriorate your relationship to the point where you're not willing to fight for it anymore. Because when the puppy love is over, when that blinding excitement that, oh, I don't care what they do, I just love them so much stage is over. And you
trust me, it always wears off.
Steph gives it a 2-year shelf.
I give it a 2 year.
She's about right on time with that too. When you have to start fighting for your relationship, when you got to get in the arena and have these conversations that lead to just this beautiful life that's potentially standing in front of you with this amazing partner that you already have there with you. You got to be willing to have these conversations. You got to be willing to go through the 5 F's we went through, plus the bonus F we went through. So have these conversations. I promise you won't regret it. Either way, it's going to align you the way in the direction that you're meant to be headed. And 99.9% of the time, that's still going to be with the same partner. It's just going to be with the partner that you need and the partner. And then you're going to be the partner that they need. And then you're going to have the success that starts to change those generational legacies. So look, if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who could benefit from this marriage, right? We tell people a lot, and Steph and I do this too. We listen to podcasts together. Listen to this with your partner and let this be the framework for the dialogue that you can have to
or
make.
Even if you listen by yourself and it resonates, or you feel like your partner needs to hear it, really get on and listen to it with them together so you can really discuss it, or even listen to it separately and come back together and discuss it.
We've paused it in the middle of other podcasts to have a conversation, or we've listened to the end and then said, what did you take away? And what did you take away? And then there's always like this beautiful conversation that happens between the two of us.
And usually we do kind of key in on different things, but we talk about it so we both get to hear what each other thought was important.
That's right. And look, stop playing around, y'all. Join. Don't loin it. Jesus, these braces got my mouth messed up, my voice messed up. Join the legacy driven marriages communities on Instagram and Facebook to stay involved with other couples fighting to build their best relationships. We need more people like every single one of us, all of you listening, Stephanie and I, showing people that relationships are worth fighting for. There's too many damn people giving up on their relationships and giving up on their families. So I want you guys to stay in that relationship arena and show other people that they can do the same thing too.
Okay, so until the next time, keep fighting for your marriage, keep loving each other, and keep elevating your family legacy.
Boom.
See you guys next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.